Welcome to the deep dive, where we kind of like plunge right into the middle of the stuff you want to know more about.
Yeah.
And today we're going deep into Han Kang's Greek lessons.
Oh, yes.
This is a really, really fascinating look at the way we use language.
Right.
The way we don't use language and how we find meaning through it all.
Exactly.
And it's we've got this really unusual book you guys sent us this time.
Yeah, it is unusual.
It's got first person and then it's got third person.
Right.
It's got letters and then it's got like these almost dreamlike sequences.
Yes.
So it's really interesting the way it all comes together.
Yeah, and somehow it works.
It really does. And I think it makes you think about, have you ever felt like words just weren't enough?
Oh, yeah.
Or like silence was just screaming at you?
All the time.
Greek lessons goes right to the heart of that.
Yeah, it's powerful stuff.
All right, so let's unpack this a little bit.
Okay.
Our main character is a woman living in Seoul, and she's lost her ability to speak. Now, the way Kang described her is really interesting. She's dressed in black, she's constantly blinking,
Right.
and she's really withdrawn, almost like she's trying to disappear.
What's so fascinating to me is how those physical details, really show us her inner world.
Yeah.
You know, a world that's completely cut off from language.
Yeah, she's almost like a shadow, right?
Exactly.
So this woman, she decides to take a beginner's ancient Greek class.
Interesting choice.
Right. It seems completely random.
Yeah, at first.
But as you read on, you realize it's like super significant.
Definitely.
Now, the lecturer, he describes ancient Greek as being at its like zenith, super complex, but also really beautiful.
Right, a language that was like at its peak.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
makes you wonder, why ancient Greek?
No, it's a great question, right?
Why would she be drawn to something so seemingly distant?
I think it's that distance that draws her in.
Yeah.
It's like this totally alien structure compared to her everyday life.
Right.
So maybe it's a way to escape the language she's lost.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
And then Kang starts to give us these glimpses into the woman's past.
Mm-hmm.
We learn that as a kid, she was fascinated by Hangul.
The Korean alphabet.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
And she loved the structure of it.
Right.
Like she just found joy in the way it all fit together.
This early love for language, it's like it really sets up the tragedy of her later loss.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then we get this scene from her teenage years
Okay.
where she's been silent for a while,
Hmm.
and then suddenly she hears this one French word,
What is it?
bibliothèque,
Oh, wow.
and it like reawakens her awareness of language.
Huh. That's so interesting.
But here's where it gets really weird. It's like exhilarating and terrifying at the same time.
Right.
Why would that be?
Well, it seems like Kang is saying that language.
Mhm.
It can be a gift, but it can also be like a burden.
Right.
It can connect us, but it can also alienate us.
Absolutely.
It's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
And then we start to get hints of this traumatic event
Yeah.
that ultimately led to her not being able to speak.
Right.
It's like this violent encounter that's slowly revealed throughout the novel.
Okay, I see.
And that adds another layer to her complicated relationship with language, right?
Definitely.
It's not just like a personal loss anymore.
Right.
It's like it's been taken from her.
It's been forced on her. Yeah.
Yeah.
That silence.
A silencing.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Now, another really interesting part of the book
Okay.
is that it includes these letters that she's written to her younger sister.
Oh, wow.
And these letters, they're like a window into her mind.
Mm.
We see her struggling with insomnia,
Mm-hmm.
the grief of losing custody of her son,
Wow.
and this deep longing for connection.
So it's in these letters that we see her most vulnerable,
Yeah.
right?
They're full of things she can't say out loud.
And they're so focused on the physical, you
Yeah.
know, like breath touch, the act of writing itself.
It's like Kang's exploring what's left of language.
Right.
When the words are gone.
Exactly what remains.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's this one letter addressed to Ran,
Okay.
who we find out is a woman she loved as a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just so raw and full of unspoken emotion.
It's like a testament to the limits of language, right?
Yeah.
Like words just aren't enough to express that kind of loss.
Exactly.
Especially when it comes to love and, the past.
Right. And it makes you think about the themes of silence and darkness
Mm-hmm.
that run throughout the whole book.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
So is Kang saying that silence is always a bad thing?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think she's showing us how silence can be experienced in so many different ways.
Okay.
It depends on the context, on your relationship with language, with the world around you.
So for the woman,
Yeah,
silence was once a refuge,
right.
but now it feels more like a prison.
Exactly. And that's such a powerful image.
Yeah, it really is.
That her muteness is not a choice,
Mm-hmm.
but a consequence.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that's been imposed on her.
And the darkness, too.
Yeah.
It's like this literal and metaphorical presence
That's both, right?
that connects to blindness, loss.
The unknown.
Yeah. And it's everywhere.
Yeah, it obscures things, but it also reveals things.
Right. It's really interesting how she does that.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like she can't fully talk about what happened,
Right.
The trauma is still there like a shadow.
Yeah. And then you've got the Greek lecturer.
Right.
Who's slowly going blind.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like their journeys mirror each other in this really profound way.
Absolutely.
They're both struggling with communication.
And perception.
Exactly.
Mm.
So what do you make of the lecturer?
Well, I think his blindness, it becomes this metaphor for the limits of what we can actually see and understand.
Yeah.
Like, just as he's losing his physical sight,
Right.
she's lost her voice, which is like this huge part of who she is.
Yeah.
So they're both navigating the world with this diminished sense, but at the same time, they're also becoming more aware of their other senses.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And then there's that scene where he falls down the stairs.
Oh, yeah.
And she helps him up.
It's like this wordless exchange.
Yeah. And it totally changes their relationship.
It's a moment of shared vulnerability.
Right.
Where their limitations actually bring them closer.
Yeah.
And it shows that even without words,
Yeah.
human connection is still possible.
It's a glimmer of hope in this otherwise pretty bleak story. We see her struggling with silence now. But in those letters to her sister, she hints at how she used to experience it.
Right.
Like earlier in her life, she actually found comfort in silence.
And that's what's so interesting about silence, right?
Yeah.
It can be so different depending on like when and where you experience it.
Yeah.
For her, it used to be about having control,
Okay.
like creating space for herself in a world that was too loud.
So it was a choice.
Exactly.
But now it's forced on her.
Yeah, and it represents this loss of control.
Okay, so do you think learning ancient Greek is her way of trying to regain that control?
Maybe it could be.
Yeah.
Ancient Greek with all its rules and its history.
Right.
It's like a completely different way of approaching language.
Right.
And it takes so much focus and discipline.
Yeah.
Maybe it gives her a sense of order that she's been missing.
And then there's the motif of time.
Ah, yes.
Which is really interesting.
Yeah.
She experiences time as like fragmented and fluid, always being pulled back into the past.
Right.
But the lecturer sees time as this destructive force
Yes.
that's slowly erasing his memories and leading to blindness.
It's like they have these totally opposite perspectives.
Yeah.
But it reflects their own individual journeys.
Right.
She's haunted by her past.
Yeah.
And he's terrified of the future.
And yet they connect over it.
They do.
It's like this shared experience of loss.
Absolutely. Like her fragmented memories and his impending blindness.
It's all loss, just in different forms.
Exactly. Different ways of losing something precious.
And it's interesting how teaching ancient Greek seems to change how she sees language.
What do you mean?
But she describes it as this living thing.
Oh, wow.
That's constantly evolving and changing.
That's a really beautiful way to think about it.
Right.
It means that language isn't static.
Yeah.
It reflects us, our thoughts, our cultures.
And it changes with us.
Exactly. And it carries all this history and potential within it.
And that ties into the whole theme of perception.
Mm-hmm.
Both of them are experiencing the world in these really unique ways.
Right.
Like they're limited.
But also heightened.
Exactly. They notice things that others might miss.
Yeah.
And they find beauty and meaning in unexpected places.
It's like their senses are becoming more acute.
Yeah.
Because they're having to adapt to these challenges.
She's lost her voice, so she's more sensitive to sound and touch.
Right.
And he's losing his sight, so he's more aware of sound and smell.
It's amazing how our senses compensate.
Yeah.
When one fades, the others become stronger.
It's like their limitations have opened up these new avenues of perception.
Exactly. And it makes them experience the world in a much deeper way.
In a world that's so focused on what we see,
right.
Greek Lessons is asking us to consider the power of our other senses.
Absolutely. To pay attention to the things we might normally overlook.
The richness that exists beyond sight.
Yeah. To appreciate the world in a more complete way.
Like she's saying, hey, pay attention to what you hear or what you feel.
Yeah, exactly.
And she talks about nature a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Both the woman and the lecturer find this real connection with the natural world.
It's like a sanctuary for them.
There's this one passage where she's walking in the woods,
and
she describes the sunlight filtering through the leaves.
Right.
The smell of pine needles.
It's like a sensory escape
Okay, exactly.
from all the pain and confusion.
Yeah, it's like nature is this space where language doesn't matter.
Right.
And you can just be.
Yeah, it just exists.
And the lecturer, he talks about sunspots in one of his classes.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
He describes them as these bursts of energy that are both beautiful and destructive.
Right, like they can create and destroy at the same time.
Do you think that's a metaphor for the woman's experience?
I think so, yeah.
She's seen how powerful language can be.
Right.
But she's also been hurt by it.
It's like that traumatic incident.
Yeah.
It left a scar.
A silencing.
Yeah.
And it makes you realize that even the most beautiful things can have a dark side.
Mm-hmm.
And that beauty can be so fragile.
Yeah, it can disappear in an instant.
But even with all the darkness and the silence,
yeah,
there's this sense of hope that runs through the whole book.
Right.
The woman never gives up.
She keeps searching?
Yeah. For meaning, for connection.
I love that about her.
Me too. And that scene where she visits the lecturer after he's gone completely blind.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It's so powerful.
It is.
She finds him in his apartment, sitting in darkness, listening to music.
And they just sit together.
Yeah, it's such a sad moment.
Yeah, there's so much loss there.
But there's also this sense of peace.
It's like they understand each other.
Yeah, on a level that goes beyond words.
And the music becomes like this bridge between them.
Right. It's another way to communicate.
Exactly.
When words fail.
It's pure emotion.
Yeah. And in the last scene, she's walking home alone at night, thinking about the lecturer. And she realizes that even though they might never speak again, their connection will remain.
It's a beautiful thought, right?
It is.
That connection can exist beyond words and even physical presence.
Yeah.
It's about shared experience.
Understanding.
Empathy.
And then she whispers one word.
What is it?
Woods.
Woods. Woods. Huh?
And it's like that one word holds all these different meanings for her.
The woods are like this place of refuge,
Yeah.
mystery of reconnection.
She can be herself there.
Right.
Away from all the noise and expectations.
And maybe even find a way to start again.
It's a perfect ending. For a book that's all about the power of language and the resilience of human connection.
Greek Lessons really makes you think.
It does. It makes you listen differently
to
the world around you and to that quiet voice inside.
It's a gift.
So if you haven't read it yet, definitely check it out.
I second that.
And if you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure you subscribe to our channel for more.
Yeah, we'll be back with another one soon.
And don't forget to tell your friends about the show and about Greek Lessons.
Spread the word.
Happy reading, everyone.